Hey, deserving listeners, The Ultimatum. My name is Dr. Kirk Honda. I'm a therapist and a professor. Keep in mind that everything I say in reaction to the show is completely speculative based on very little information. So let's watch.
How are you?
Unwell. They kind of wanted us to talk about what happened last night.
I had a lot of fun last night. I believe I fingered you. I think that was it, right?
Okay, so Ray seems to be opening up the conversation with some emotion. It sounded like some real pain behind the demeanor of her voice. And then Vanessa seemingly not picking up on that or trying to deny it or, I don't know, says what she just said. Or they edited that funny, which we can't know. But let's see how this conversation goes further.
Obviously, we know what happened. How are you feeling about it?
It was like a slice of freedom after we were in jail for a long time. Just in that sense was like euphoric, I think.
Okay, side note, I don't think this is what they're getting at, but for Vanessa, she was talking earlier about not wanting monogamy, and then that phrasing of it was great to be sexual with another person because I felt like I got out of jail. So that's one more tick in the column of you have a polyamorous oriented individual who is forcing themselves or doesn't know or something and is thus forcing themselves into a monogamous style of relationship.
I texted with Lexi and called her. She obviously wasn't happy. She's gonna try to figure out what her life is like without me.
Okay, so Ray texted her former partner, Lexi. I don't know what Ray said. Sounds like maybe that something sexual happened. And Lexi is upset and wanting to officially break up. Now, arguably, they already are broken up, right? That's the premise of the show, but we all understand that it's not really that. So let's hear let's hear the words that Ray is saying.
I texted with Lexi and called her. She obviously wasn't happy. She's gonna try to figure out what her life is like without me.
Okay, so yeah, I'm gonna assume that Ray told Lexi that her and Vanessa got together. She and Vanessa got together sexually, and Lexi is hurt and upset by that. You know, it makes sense, but it is the premise of the show, presumably. So it seems, and Lexi indicated this earlier, I think, or at least showed signs of this, that I think because she gave the ultimatum, right? I have to make sure I look at and according to my notes, I don't know if we've heard exactly why Ray didn't want to marry Lexi. I think she just wasn't quite sure yet. Ray isn't very expressive or is more reserved on camera, or they've been editing her statements out or something. So it's just hard to know what Ray is feeling. Also, she's been described as a conundrum by people that she was dating on the show, which lends itself to the hypothesis that Ray is generally reserved and generally non-emotionally spontaneous or expressive or talkative. So nothing wrong with that, but that would make it harder to understand what's going on for us in particular. But for Lexi, an hypothesis is that Lexi really wanted to be with Ray and get married, according to the ultimatum that she apparently gave before coming on the show. They've been together for 3 years, Lexi and Ray, and went on the show hoping, either in a fantasy, subconsciously or consciously, that once Ray saw Lexi with other women, or once Ray met other women and realized that Lexi is much better than the other women, that Ray would go through the motions of the trial marriage, but certainly wouldn't take intimate actions with the other person. And then after the thing would happen, the trial marriage would happen, then Ray and Lexi would live happy ever after. You can imagine someone hoping that. I think that is sort of the premise of the show for the ultimatum givers, right? That's presumably the hope for them, because otherwise, why would they risk this, right? So Lexi seems to have made a conclusion of, well, I have my answer. If she's willing to get together with Vanessa, then she must not really love me. That's not necessarily true, but you could see someone concluding that.
I fucking hurt her. to hear her say that we might not have a fucking future is like fucking hard to hear.
It's also possible that Lexi is just going through a thing, that she is triggered and temporarily feeling this way, and maybe even consciously just believes absolutely it's over, and then give her a couple days and she'll come around or something. So yeah, it's just hard to know. Now, in terms of the way they're editing it, which we can't ever know, but Ray is having a moment, and it's obvious that it's difficult for her. And Vanessa is now smiling. So let's see how this goes.
Sure is like fucking hard to hear. She's just going on about how she has to tell her family and friends that I did this. And like, she was like, her grandpa loves me. I don't know why. I don't know why anyone likes me, to be honest. She's like,
I don't know. Anyway, by the way, the only way we could trust more this show in terms of the editing is if they do a two-shot. If both people are in the shot and you see one person talk and the other person react. When they do these over the shoulder, you have no idea what portion of the conversation they're in. They're using those opaque glassware, so you can't see the levels of the liquid to detect when they're editing it in a funny way. So we can't know. But at any rate, we just heard something major from Ray, and we've seen indications of this before, and I was wondering about this. Again, it's not a sure thing in terms of even just what Ray said, but she says, Lexi's grandpa really loves me, which I don't really understand. I don't understand why anyone would like me. Now, is Ray just talking about Lexi's family, or is Ray saying that about everyone? If she's saying that about everyone, that does land within this hypothesis zone where, if I look at my notes, right, so Vanessa and Ray were on a date earlier before they decided to do the trial marriage, and Vanessa said, hey, you tell me 3 things that are great about you, and I'll tell you 3 things that are great about me, and Ray could not do it. Was it nervousness, or was it that she literally cannot come up with things that are positive about her because she doesn't think there's anything positive about her? It was looking more like the latter. Then being described as a conundrum, as being hard to read, being that she is reserved. Is there a self-esteem issue there? Is there depression? Is there trauma there? I don't know, but there seems to be some indications of that.
I don't know how to call him and tell him that you did that. I'm like, yeah, I get it.
Did you remind her how hot and irresistible I am? It's interesting because my last time I talked to Lexi, like that last date, all she was doing was talking about how we are supposed to be in this experience. Like,
so, yikes on one level, but also, yeah, that is true. And I had forgotten that kind of. And I had identified that double standard before by Lexi, that she was really angry at Vanessa for not being 100% invested in the process, which involves actually giving the trial marriage an actual trial. Not only just getting together physically, but actually getting into a mindset that I will spend the rest of my life with this trial partner. So Lexi was very much on that side of, you got to fully commit to the process, which I'm guessing involved physical intimacy of some sort. And then at the same time, she would attack Ray for being invested in the process and actually being trying to see if things are going to work with Vanessa. And Ray seemed surprised that she was being attacked by Lexi. So when Vanessa brings that up, yeah, that's a good point to make. But the first thing she says is, and so normally without Xander defending Vanessa at the choosing ceremony, I don't know why this is the choosing ceremony. It's more like a long table choosing ceremony. Or choosing ceremony. I talk with my hands, and I don't know what my hands are going to do. So we saw Xander defending Vanessa, and so there are a lot of behaviors from Vanessa that are aggravating, concerning, problematic, that are in the zone of a grandiose sense of self, of being self-centered and thinking that she's superior or better or something, not seeing other people's emotions, not noticing or caring or something like that. Okay, so this is in the camp of narcissism, We've been over this already. And I'm hesitant to even use that word because the internet is a place where there's a lot of misunderstanding about that term and also a lot of judgment. Some of the best clients I've ever had have had narcissistic personality disorder. Some of the best people in my personal life are on the spectrum. So it's not the way the internet talks about it. It certainly can be annoying and can be harmful, absolutely. But it's not this universal thing that people on the spectrum are universally harmful all the time. So they're human beings. They have the same needs and wants. They have a capacity for empathy and attachment that can be impaired. They can become very abusive, depending, if they're on the severe side of the disorder spectrum, if they have no assistance, if they're in a bad spot in their life and they're triggered, then yeah, they can become abusive, not always. So I just want to say that. And I'm not diagnosing her. That'd be really ridiculous, irresponsible, unethical. So I'm not saying that. But what we saw was that statement of, but does she understand that I'm hot? And it's in this camp of behaviors from Vanessa. And then we saw Vanessa actually have a meltdown emotionally when Xander was saying that she actually she was feeling a connection with Yoli, right? And you saw this very quick change for Vanessa of like the floor falling out from underneath her, and she was panicking almost, right? It looked like trauma, right? Looked deep, looked really hard. It wasn't just like being hurt. It was something more fundamental than even just common relationship hurt, right? Which can be devastating, but it seemed more robust than that. And so that also indicates in that camp of narcissism, people with narcissistic personality disorder, when they're on the spectrum, the self-grandiosity, the self-centeredness, the impaired empathy is because of vast suffering underneath the surface that they are trying to defend themselves from. They're in a constant state of suffering, and this distraction and this self-assured, they're trying to assure themselves that they matter, that they are someone, and they overcompensate by saying they matter more than other people because they need to do that to counterbalance, at least to some extent, how convinced they are that they don't matter at all and that they're worthless and they're inferior to everyone on the planet because that's how they were being treated when they were younger. So Xander defended Vanessa and I was suspecting that might be the case because Xander seems like a healthy person, and Xander and Vanessa have been together for 4 years. So why would Xander be with someone that was like that? Maybe Xander is a pushover or passive or a doormat. Xander doesn't seem that way. There seems to be some maybe element of that, but there's also a possibility that Xander is just she's such a healthy, good person that she can see through the defenses that other people have, such that Xander and Vanessa could have a close enough attachment so that Vanessa wouldn't have to engage in those defenses, and Xander behind closed doors could attest to, no, Vanessa is a wonderful, caring, loving person that doesn't do those things that you see, because Vanessa only does that when she's nervous and when she's triggered, and she doesn't even really know it until later on, maybe. So what could have happened right here is that Ray is now telling the morning after, and I'm guessing that Vanessa actually felt some connection with Ray and had a good time with Ray last night, and then Ray is now sad about Lexi, and that even just acknowledging that Ray reached out to Lexi is, you can imagine Vanessa being a little bit hurt by that, maybe even a little worried, like, oh, does that mean that Ray doesn't want to be with me or something? Now, intellectually, we could imagine that Vanessa would say, well, it's just a trial marriage, so God knows what's going to happen. But you can imagine buying into the process of the show and at least on a heart-to-heart level, really wanting some indication that someone loves you or cares about you or is dedicated to you, even if it's just for the 3 weeks. Who knows? And but at the very least, you can imagine that Vanessa could be hurt that Ray reached out. You could also imagine a concern that Vanessa would have of, does this mean that Ray isn't going to want to be with me because now Ray is being pulled back to Lexi because Lexi is kind of giving another ultimatum in the middle of the ultimatum. You know what I mean? Lexi didn't actually give a stated ultimatum, but it's kind of implied, right? It's like, you got together with Vanessa, things are over. So it wouldn't be unusual for Ray in this situation to intuit, oh, if I really want to destroy my chances with Lexi, which I don't want to do because I really love her and I've been with her for 3 years. If I want to destroy that, then I will continue to be in this relationship with Vanessa and continue to get together sexually. Or if I want to get Lexi back, which would be the logical move because she doesn't know Vanessa and she does know Lexi and she would presumably want to get her back. I don't know, or at least would have an impulse there because she's attached. That Ray would maybe stop actually being invested in the process with Vanessa, and will pull back and maybe go through the motions or just bounce and say, I can't live with Vanessa anymore, blah, blah. So we can imagine that Vanessa would intuit that in this moment and be concerned of a loss. Okay, so then there's that trigger. I'm worthless. No one's going to love me. I'm inferior. So then I must engage in my habitual defense, which is to aggrandize myself, which is what she said, which is, but does she realize how hot I am?
She's like, I don't know how to call him and tell him that you did that. And I'm like, yeah, I get it.
Did you remind her how hot and irresistible I am?
And then what will happen is it's a self-fulfilling prophecy because the schema is I'm worthless and no one wants to love me. And so you're more easily triggered. And then you engage in the defense of I'm superior as a way of trying to counteract that emerging sense of I'm worthless, I'm about to be rejected. And then it causes people to be put off by that. And then they do reject you. And then it causes more trauma, which gives more reason to have the defense, which causes more grandiosity, more pathological independence, more impaired empathy, and so on. And then hopefully you get to therapy with someone that knows what they're doing, because not every therapist, according to research, knows what they're doing when it comes to even assessing narcissistic personality. And you get with someone that knows what they're doing, and you begin the recovery process, and then you can avoid re-traumatizing yourself by recreating the abandonment.
This is your ex, like you're fine, you're in this new trial marriage. It's kind of like when Amish people go on Rothspringer or something, and they're like, oh, like we're free for 6 months, and then they can decide whether they want to go back to Amish life or not. Mm-hmm. I feel like this is that. So we should just have a threesome, honestly, at this point. God.
Yeah. So if I were there, I would say, okay, Ray, how you doing? Because if I could get Ray to tell me how she feels about what Vanessa is doing right now, might Ray say, I actually kind of appreciate the way that she is light about things and is trying to have compassionate jokes? Or would Ray feel like dismissed or demeaned by the way that Vanessa is acting? Because, there's a lot of different ways to act. If it were me, because given my style, I would just listen to Ray and say, like, yeah, that's rough. I'm sorry you're going through that. Is there anything I can do? Or what do you need? I could see you feeling that way. Just elicit more from Ray. I will say that there seems to be maybe a similar dynamic developing, and maybe that's why Ray picked Vanessa, because Lexi, I think, matches with Ray in a way that Lexi would be dominant in a lot of ways, in conversation and in taking up space emotionally, and Ray does not. So, and Ray might even elicit that. She might actually want people to do that because she devalues herself, and it seems to be happening again.
You give each other the room. You give each other the space to explore everything this is. I didn't ask her to tell me she wasn't going to sleep with Vanessa. I didn't ask that of her. I tried to tell her to just be careful.
Yeah.
The type of person Vanessa is, I don't think she's here for the right reasons. The person who
Yeah, more of this perspective from Lexi, which is interesting. I think what Lexi is grabbing for is some lifeline to hope or attachment to Ray, instead of recognizing that Ray made a choice, that Ray chose to connect with Vanessa and be with Vanessa. Early on, I wondered if there was a codependent relationship, an over-functioning, under-functioning relationship with Lexi and Ray, because Lexi identified as someone who always had partners that she had to take care of or help or something, and that seemed to indicate over-functioning. I don't know. But the part that I wanted to know was like, well, if Lexi is being overfunctioning, which we could imagine, it's hard to see exactly, but we could imagine her being on the side, and she describes it, but we could imagine her being very active and assertive. And then but the part of it that I was wondering about is like, well, what is Ray underfunctioning? Because these things go hand in hand. So how would Ray underfunction? And there's a lot of different domains in which a human being can underfunction. You can underfunction with work, with relationships, with addiction, with other kinds of things, financial problems, with immaturity. So with Ray, I didn't know, she doesn't tell us much, but she has indicated some possible indications of low self-esteem, maybe depression, maybe lack of assertiveness, lack of being in the room, needing someone to pull her out of her shell or something. And so maybe that's how she underfunctions. There's a lot of speculation here, of course. But if that is at least somewhere in that camp, then what can develop between the two people is that both will agree, Lexi and Ray, that Ray doesn't have a personality, that Ray doesn't really even exist, that can be agreed upon by the overfunctioner and the underfunctioner. And the overfunctioner feels like, I need to take care of this person. I need to tell them what to do. I need to help them when they are not knowing what to do. And Ray comes to the table with some of that, but it gets worse over time because of that dynamic, right? And then Ray believes about herself that she's worthless, that there's nothing to her, and that dynamic perpetuates because look how pathetic I am, that Lexi has to pick up after me all the time, that Lexi constantly has to fix my problems. She always has to pick me up and help me make decisions because I'm incompetent generally. That's often the syndrome of the underfunctioners, a deep schema, a belief that they are incompetent. And so there's not a lot of indication of this, but it's possible that it's in that camp. If that is somewhere near the mark, then Lexi, being the overfunctioner, codependent person, they would assume that Ray, in this scenario, being with Vanessa, that it's not actually Ray doing the willful action of being with another person. It must be someone else that is influencing her, because Ray is not competent enough, or I don't see her as someone that makes her own choices. So there's that interpretation. Also, if you are desperate to hold on to the hope that Ray might love you and that you might spend the rest of your life with Ray, presumably that's what Lexi wants, she gave the ultimatum, then you would need someone else to blame. Surely it wasn't Ray that did it. Vanessa must have manipulated Ray to be with her. So it's, yeah. But it certainly didn't, it didn't look that way. It didn't look like Vanessa somehow overpowered or dominated Ray. But it's possible that Ray would report that she just went along for the ride, that she was a leaf in the wind. The question that I would ask Ray, and if I had a good enough relationship that I could trust that she would feel safe enough to answer, I would say, did you make a willful choice last night to be with Vanessa and to have sex with her, to get together with her physically? Did you make that choice? Did you want to make that choice? Did you want to be with Vanessa? Now, it's possible that Ray would say, I don't know, or no, I just went along with it because I figured I should, or I don't know what I want because I've never known what I want because of the way I've been treated my entire life. I don't know who I am. I didn't mind doing it. That's what I will hear from people that have this syndrome, that have a lack of connection with the self due to being treated that way and never being allowed to be safe enough to explore what they want and what they need. The truthful answer, if I can have a good enough relationship that they feel safe enough to tell me, because if they don't feel safe, they'll say, yes, I did want to do it, but that might not actually be the case. And so if they feel safe enough, then what I will hear from people with this syndrome is, well, I didn't mind doing it. I'm okay doing it. And it's like, that's not answering the question, of course, but they might not have an answer to the question because they don't know. They've never been in touch with their feelings, or they don't feel like they deserve to be in touch with their feelings, or both. And so to ask these individuals, did you want to do what you did last night, is a nonsensical question, because that's never been an answerable question to them. So there seems to be some indication of that. And right now, Lexi is hurt, which makes sense. It doesn't make logical sense because you were very adamant that everyone follow the process, and you were the one presumably that brought Ray onto the show. I think they even stated that explicitly. So what did you expect? And Lexi is upset. So logically it doesn't make sense, but of course we're not logical creatures. And Lexi, I think deep down, is hurt that Ray was with someone else, even though I think Lexi was basically the person who set that up to begin with.
Thought loved me, came here, and then slept with that person. It feels like a betrayal.
And she keeps emphasizing that person, Vanessa, right? As if it was someone else, it would be okay, which is possible. And I'll take Lexi's word for it, I guess, but it's possible that that's not actually the case, that it has really nothing to do. It makes it particularly hurtful that it's with Vanessa, but Lexi would have been hurt if it was anybody. In fact, I would imagine Lexi would be more concerned if it was someone else. Or does Lexi know that Ray is susceptible to influence, such that Vanessa, given her personality, will have a greater chance of influencing Ray against Lexi or something like that. Now, Lexi also knows that Vanessa is not interested really in the process and does not want to explore marriage with anyone, Xander or the random person that she met on the show. So Lexi could know that it's by definition temporary with Ray. Anyway, but then at the end, she reflects and says it feels like a betrayal in a half questioning way, which is evidence of differentiation. I'm guessing Lexi had that response to one of Mal's questions. Mal's being very attentive right now, and it seemed like the sort of response someone would have having been asked, that Mal would say, well, how do you feel about it? And then Lexi would say it feels like a betrayal. And that gives me hope for Lexi, that she can look at her feelings. It feels like a betrayal instead of it is a betrayal. Now, it might be a betrayal, but for us to be able to navigate what's happening in a situation, a high emotional situation, we have to have some question marks initially. And it sounds like she is having that.
It feels like a betrayal. But I'm like sick to my stomach about it.
Now, contrast Mal's listening style to Lexi with Vanessa's listening style to Ray. I'm not saying that Vanessa was unhealthy or not good. We'd have to ask Ray what she wanted from Vanessa, because it's possible that Vanessa's response was exactly what Ray needed. But at the very least, when in doubt, what Mal is doing is the right call, which is to listen. And so often on these shows and in life, people don't do this healthily. We did hear from Mal that her parents have been together for 45 years or something like that. And who knows, but that could indicate a relatively low trauma childhood and thus more secure attachment, more modeling of good listening skills, more self-confidence to put yourself aside for a second and actually listen to someone else. Because remember, with Vanessa, I was hypothesizing it would be normal when Ray starts to lament her relationship with Lexi for Vanessa to be a little threatened by that. It's normal to be a little hurt, a little concerned, and to get a little squirrely with how you respond because you're trying to defend against that. And Mal would have a similar impulse right now, similar concern of like, wow, I want to feel special to Lexi because I'm, connecting with her. And this is akin to you're on the second date and you're starting to fall for someone and they spend the whole date talking about their ex. It'd be okay in my book, but it would concern the person, right? It was just like, is this person ready for a relationship? Does this person actually like me? So Mal's able to put herself aside and actually just listen. There are therapists that I know and trainees that I have worked with who could benefit from watching and modeling themselves after what Mal is doing. Now, I don't know. I never know. Sometimes as the season progresses, people emerge with much more unhealthy behavior. I think when I watched season 4, Love is Blind, I commended Micah early on in the season and thought, oh, yeah, that's pretty healthy. And then, so I don't know. But so far, Mal is being a really good partner and exhibiting a lot of health and maturity.
What happened here, was not love. This was not love. Why would I ever want to, marry someone like that?
There would be such a temptation for someone in Mal's shoes to do something, right? When someone else is suffering, especially when you care for them, there's such a compulsion to try to fix it. And it is often not right-headed. It's often not helpful. Often it can really upset the person that is going through something if you try to fix it. So there'd be such a temptation of saying something like, and I had that actually emerge in me. That's why I'm kind of saying this right now. When she said that, she's like, oh, she never loved me, something like that. And I have an impulse to say well, we don't know that. It's possible that she did love you and still does, but is exploring something. There's another way to look at this. That's me trying to solve it. That's me trying to help her. Now, I'm not saying that's not necessarily helpful, but when in doubt, just listen, just be with someone, Often people will figure it out anyway. You don't need to suggest obvious things to people necessarily. But bottom line, you can't go wrong by doing what Mal is doing, is just, eye contact. I'm here with you. She moved closer as she started to cry more, which is a warm gesture. And just refrain from entering the picture with your own weird ideas, So few people ever do this in life, and particularly on these shows, what Mal is doing right now. Just eye contact. You don't even have to say that. Just show that you're here. You're with them. You will have plenty of time to give advice or to provide perspective later on. The day is long. There's 16 hours that you're typically awake in a day. So you don't have to insert everything in this moment. First things first, just let someone have the emotion and be with them.
It sucks. It sucks. Selfishly, I'm annoyed because now it affects my process. But we're here. You're this really smart, really beautiful girl who makes really good decisions all the time, who is super caring. The list goes on. So you're not as lost as you think you are. I know this sucks, but you're good. You're good. You're okay. We're gonna ride this wave together.
Okay, yeah. If you're gonna say something, that was a lot of good things to say. It was identifying that it sucks. She started with that. It was a good starter. It sucks. And there's no way around that. You're not seeing things wrong. It does suck, and it's going to suck. It sucks. And you're a good person. You're strong. You'll see your way through this. It's kind of in the direction of solving it. I'm guessing that Lexi appreciates that, seemed to have. But yeah, if you're going to say something, then those are some good things to say.
So appreciative to have you here. To show up and love someone, to show up and care about someone. I love you.
Seemed edited, a little funny. The I love you inserted there. So was that out of context? Was Lexi saying, after season 4, Love is Blind, I'm just whenever they do kind of weird edits like that, I'm just wondering. I don't know. But at the very least, I could see Lexi really liking this because Lexi has talked about how she's the one that's often taking care of other people. And I think, and we can imagine, though, given the way Ray is, that there wasn't a lot of this sort of thing where someone really just shows up and says, I'm with you and I'm okay and I'm here for you and I see you in a good light and I'm unafraid. And I'm not distancing, and I have patience, and I'm with you. That's what you need. That's often what we want our therapists to do. It's what we want our partners to do, our family to do. It's what we need parents to do. And I'm guessing that given Lexi's dynamic, given her the sort of people that she typically chooses, that she's never had someone just do what Mal is doing right now. It's okay, now it's your turn to have a meltdown and have someone take care of you. So this could actually be really powerful for Lexi, a really powerful bonding thing. Now, the issue, though, is that, of course, Lexi wants that, but there are other needs and defenses, right? This could actually open Lexi up in a way that she's not used to, in a way that's too vulnerable for her given her traumas. And she either will not be attracted to Mal because of that. It'll feel like a lack of attraction because it doesn't feel safe. It doesn't feel normal because she's not used to that. Even though intellectually she's like, it is a good thing, right? But it doesn't feel right. So I must not just be attracted to that person. I'm not feeling that spark. Or she will sabotage somehow. She will figure out a way to try to subconsciously rework the relationship such that Mal is the underfunctioner, because that's where Lexi feels the most comfortable. It's where Lexi feels safe. It's her role in life to always overfunction for others and to be the martyr. So I don't know. We'll keep an eye on it. All right. Well, I want to thank you for subscribing to this channel. That is something that helps us out in a lot of ways and can possibly help the algorithm suggest videos to you in the future. And everyone, please take care of yourself because you deserve it. You really, really do.